Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for the Center Square. I'm speaking with Benjamin Yount, who is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent. Ben, welcome.
It is always good to spend my Thursdays with you, Bruce.
Maybe we should go out and grab a meal together.
I see the transition you're making. I get it, but you couldn't pay me to eat a school lunch in a public school in the state of Wisconsin in the year 2023. No way at all.
Well, I'm thinking some people think that nobody should pay for school lunches, Ben.
This is an interesting thing. And this is one of these stories that a lot of times you write just what you think will be a quick couple of hundred words. Here's the latest plan at the Capitol. This was a reaction story. The state's Department of Public Instruction put out its testimony for the budget hearings. A lot of public budget hearings across the state this month. And DPI put out its list of priorities. And one of them was a statewide universal free school lunch program. And State Senator Dewey Stroebel, who is one of the education leaders for Republicans in the state Senate, he also happens to be on JFC. And I just forwarded to him and said, what are your thoughts? I didn't realize that I was opening up a fire hose of retweets and comments on Twitter that a lot of people are really bothered by what he said. And Senator Stroebel essentially said, families who can pay for their children's lunch should. And I think some of the confusion is that some people heard that as we don't need free lunch for kids. And that's not what he said. He didn't say poor kids should just suffer and get some sort of struggle sandwich of bologna. He said that you have in many school districts parents who absolutely can afford the $3 or $5 a day that it costs for their kids to eat at school, and they shouldn't get a free government program. They shouldn't be added to the state's welfare rolls. They shouldn't be given a freebie when they absolutely can afford to pay. But you know how Twitter is. You know how the online conversation is. And once it started, it went everywhere. And there are a lot of people who were really, really bothered by the idea that this Republican state senator from the WOW counties, a relatively affluent area, Cedarburg is not a cheap community to live in. They took it as an insult to families who are struggling across the state of Wisconsin. I'm not sure he meant it that way, but you try and convince the online Twitterverse that you really weren't saying that, you really were saying this. If you can manage to do that, well, then you're better at it than I am. Stroebel's quote is, and I'll read it for you. It's taxpayers should not be on the hook for paying for school lunches for families that could otherwise afford it. Wisconsin has finite resources. It's important to make sure that students who are in the most need of free and reduced price lunches are able to take advantage of the program as it was originally designed. And this is something, there was a time and place in my life. I had two young kids on a reporter's salary, plucky reporter's salary. And I think my kids qualified for free or reduced lunch. And I still think we sent them with lunch money every day because we knew we could and we didn't want to take from the kids who really couldn't. This became more of an issue during the coronavirus when all of a sudden everybody got free lunch because of the pandemic, and they were serving lunches out the back of the school door, and schools were saying, look, we're not going to ask a kid, hey, what color is your lunch card? Do you qualify or do you not? They were just making lunches and taking them and serving them to anyone who came up. And there are an awful lot of regulations that come with the free school lunch program. I asked Senator Stroebel if it would even be a conservative win to perhaps not have to deal with those regulations. And he said there's no way that it would be conservative to create another government program that fosters, as he put it, dependency. And that seems to be the split here. You have conservatives who said this is an absolute common sense measure. And you had some, I don't know if they were all liberal, but many of them were liberal on Twitter, coming at me saying this is the cruelty of Republicans. How dare he say kids from families should be paying their own way? And this is one of these issues, again, on the list of things that are the most pressing in the state of Wisconsin. This isn't even in the top 10. But when you take a look at where government becomes real, where state government all of a sudden goes from being just a thing somewhere over in Madison to being real, schools, it's cops, it's snowplows. And this week on my Twitter feed, it was school lunches.
I'm going to put this out there. Some would argue that there is a stigma attached to free school lunches when other children are paying for their lunches, that the stigma that attaches is that the kids get out to the playground and the ones who take the free school lunches are stigmatized as being poor and therefore subject to bullying.
Yeah. I remember when I was in elementary school in Stratford, New Jersey, everybody lined up in one line, but if you had the free lunch ticket, you had to go stand in another line and you got a different lunch. That's not the way that it works anymore. Again, still got kids in school. Now it's more like trying to check out at a McDonald's. Everybody goes up to the register and you give them your PIN number and they boop, 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 boop. All right, you're good to go. So by having everyone work the same process, and no longer do you have that separate lunch ticket or that lunch token or that little voucher that kids used to have, now it eliminates a lot of that. But as you know, as anyone of our age knows, sometimes we as adults like to live in the past, or we just don't know the reality of the current. And so there are an awful lot of people, Bruce, who said exactly that same thing, that if you don't have universal school lunch, if everyone doesn't get it for free, then you are going to have that split. You are going to have that bullying. And look, no one wants a kid to be made fun of because mom and dad are struggling. But that's not what Dewey Stroebel says. And by the way, there are pretty generous limits. Kids from families of 4 who make less than $36,000 a year, absolutely free school lunch, school breakfast, nothing. You can make up to $51,000 as a family of 4 and still get covered with reduced price lunches. So we're talking a good chunk of kids. In some schools, it's almost everybody. But Dewey Stroebel says you go to these suburban schools where moms and dads are making 6 figures, sometimes making 6 figures apiece. Those are the people that the state of Wisconsin, he says, should expect to pay for their own kids' lunch.
Anything else to add to that?
This is probably not going to happen. DPI has asked for the moon in this new state budget, and they aren't even going to get, I would say they aren't even going to get a star. They're not going to get a satellite. They're going to get almost nothing. They will get a small per pupil increase. There will be more money sent, particularly for special education in the next budget. But stuff like this, the sort of let's ask for everything under the sun and see what we get. I don't imagine that free school lunch for all will make the final state budget.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. This is Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for The Center Square. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.